Buenas. Welcome to Voto Latino Foundation's #VotingWorks celebration. My name is Maria Teresa Kumar. I'm the founding president and CEO of Voto Latino. We're gathered virtually today to celebrate the power of our voice and of our vote. The new White House administration has accomplished so much thanks to your vote in the first 100 days. All Americans over 16 became eligible for COVID-19 vaccinations last Monday, April 19th. This win, combined with an estimated 200 million vaccinations already administered, is such an important milestone. With the vaccine, we're able to safely re-enter society and can now collectively imagine all to come in a post-pandemic life. And there's a lot of work to rebuild to do. The Biden administration successfully signed the American Rescue Plan into law on March 11th, just 51 days into office. The significant relief bill sent $1,400 to most Americans and effectively is working to extend jobless benefits, rental assistance, and money for K-12 schools. It also aims to get 40% of all Latinos out of poverty. That's not a small feat. In addition to these early wins, the Biden administration is committed to focusing on issues that matter the most to our community and to our country. President Biden has introduced legislation that will provide a pathway for millions of undocumented immigrants, signed an executive order his first day in office to advance racial equity through the federal government, and has notably pledged to cut greenhouse gas emissions by at least half by 2030. Let me tell you, voting really does work. Who's in office really does matter. At Voto Latino, we're constantly on the mission to make sure that we all register and get out the vote. In 2020, we exceeded our organizational goals. Thanks to your wanting to participate, we registered over 612,000 new voters and mobilized nearly 4 million of you who have perhaps said it out last time to join our democracy this past election. Of the 600,000 voters we registered this cycle, 71% of them were young people under the age of 34. 54% of them were first-time voters. We successfully transformed the way that voter registration and advocacy will be conducted moving forward. Hard stop. Not our words, but that of the Analyst Institute. So let's celebrate. We've got a star-studded lineup for you all. I'm delighted to announce that we'll hear from some incredibly encouraging and exciting remarks from Vice President Kamala Harris, a longtime friend and supporter of Voto Latino, and specifically voting rights in general. We'll also have a great conversation with Paola Ramos, contributor to Vice News, on what it means to her to report for and create credible and relevant news from the perspective of our gente, so that everybody else can better understand the importance and contributions that we give this country. We'll hear from Council Member Gregorio Casar from the city of Austin, 4th District, about the state of Latinx in Texas during the Biden administration's first 100 days in office and what he is doing to help combat voter suppression in that state. And we'll also hear from my partner in crime, my guerrera in arms, our co-founder and board member, Rosario Dawson, on what Voto Latino is up to in the days to come. I'm so excited and honored to have all of you join in our celebration. We're here because of you. I'm kicking it over now to our amazing staff at Voto Latino to introduce themselves. Team, gente, time to hear from you.
Hi everyone, this is Germán Partida, Executive Assistant here at Voto Latino, along with some of our incredible staff at Voto Latino. We're taking a cafecito break right now while using our fancy and limited edition VL mugs. Visit votolatino.org/mug club to learn more about how you can purchase our mugs and how you can directly contribute to build Latinx political power with Voto Latino. Cheers. And now to get us started, I'm going to hand it over to Brianna. So Brianna, can you tell us what you've been up to in Biden's first 100 days outside of the office?
Hey guys, Brianna Carmen. I'm the Director of Organizing and Partnerships at Voto Latino. And I feel like I am so crunchy. I have been hanging out outdoors a lot, trying to reclaim our space and go mountain biking and hiking and make sure that our gente are represented out there on the trails. And I also love to cook. So I'm making my whole family go plant-based and trying to reimagine a lot of my favorite classic Mexican dishes like asado or chile colorado but with like crazy wild things like jackfruit. So that way my parents love it and they're also eating healthier while I'm here with them. Over to you, Dulce. So what wins are you looking forward to seeing during Biden's like 4 years of presidency?
So no, I'm just super excited for the next 4 years. We worked really hard in the team during quarantine, texting out like hundreds and millions of people to get mobilized to go out to vote. Because we knew that at Voto Latino that Latinos would be the second biggest voting bloc, and we were on point. We saw voters of color come out, turn out, and I'm so excited to see what all of that power of mobilization did. And I'm not going to pass up this moment to say, get involved, sign up to be a volunteer, join our Slack, and I echarle ganas. Gonna kick it over to you, Norberto. What is your most favorite content for social media?
Cool. Thanks, Dulce. So I'm the director of social media for Voto Latino. And I gotta say, like, so over the last year, we've had some like pretty. It's been pretty hard for the community as a whole. I think it's oftentimes whenever we see anything Latino related in the news, it always tends to be bad. Whether it's a bill, whether it's some piece of legislation, always attacking the community. And it's our job to amplify that stuff. It's our job to let people know whenever politicians are coming after us. And so for the last year, it's been nothing but that for the most part. But I think one of the things that I love doing is creating content that makes people happy, that brings people joy. I think it's something to say that it's something that we're consistently having to scour the internet for a lot of these stories that amplify joy, that make it so that it's not about all of this terrible news that we're consistently hitting people with, but we're trying to find news stories, we're trying to find people stories that make just people happy. Celebrate the wins in our community, whether it's Bad Bunny doing something awesome, whether it's an indigenous person making it to Harvard, whether it's a tamalera making tamales for the community. Like, there's a lot of happiness in our community that we do not amplify. And one of the things that I love about what I do here at Voto Latino is that we get the opportunity to be able to do that. It's something where we consistently have to talk about terrible things that are happening in the news, because it's important for people to know about it. But I also love making things and amplifying content that make us smile and make us proud of who we are, where we come from. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter where your family's from. It doesn't matter if you're Mexican, if you're Colombian, if you're Dominican. It doesn't matter where you come from, but it brings people joy. And I think that's the type of content that I really look forward to every time we do it, here at Voto Latino. So be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and yeah. So having said that, German, I have a question for you. What was it like for you the first? Is it true that you voted for the first time in this last election?
No, that's not accurate. I voted 2016 was my first election.
Oh, damn.
No.
Well, tell us about, okay, so because I know for a fact that a lot of people voted for the first time in this last election. So why don't you tell us about what was it like for you having voted for the first time?
Yeah, actually, I think it's quite fitting for our program today. It was in 2016, and it also was the first time that I was volunteering with a candidate for city council, so with any elected official. And for me, that was something entirely new. It was pretty scary. We were canvassing, knocking, door to door to let people know a little bit more about our candidate. Being, very young and still, very shy. It was scary to me to go knock on doors, letting people know about what was going on and a little bit more of our candidate's values. But I think it was definitely a rewarding experience in the sense that, I was able to also vote for the candidate for in my first time voting, and that candidate won. So, not only does it show the power of voting, but also, the power of organizing and really, you know, flexing our power and fighting for the people who we think that will share our values and fight for our voice. And now I'm going to kick it over to the rest of the Voto Latino staff. Again, we're so happy to have you join us for our VL Voting Works live stream celebration.
Hello from the rest of Voto Latino staff. We're so excited to be joining y'all on today's stream. My name is Camille Martin. I'm the Associate Director of Partnerships at VL. Leslie, I would love for you to introduce yourself, but would also love for you to answer this question. So I'm wondering, what does it mean for you to be a young Latina working at an organization that seeks to empower young Latinx to be change makers?
Yeah, well, hi everyone. My name is Leslie. I'm the digital associate here at VL. And to answer your question, it really means a lot because a lot of the work that we do here directly impacts our community and like my close family and friends. So getting to directly work in this space is like huge. Getting to work on different like partnerships like with you and like Lyft and getting people to get their vaccine is really important. So that's been like huge in my life. So I'm really lucky to get to do that here. And I have a question for Danny, throwing it over to you. How do you have politically engaging conversations with people in your life that may not be super invested?
Thanks, Leslie. I'm Danny Friedman. I'm the managing director of Voto Latino. The way that I start these conversations with my friends and family who aren't as politically engaged is just by grounding it in real life and the things that impact us every day. So whether that is, getting your vaccine and then being able to have like family gatherings and family barbecues without masks, or taking the census and doing what it takes to make sure that we have the resources our community needs, like enough seats in classrooms for kids, but really kind of taking the political dialogue out of it and grounding it in real life. And it just makes it more accessible and more real. Mariah, I have a question for you. Why is it so important that we empower our community to take part in politics and seek out credible news?
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm Mariah. I'm a social media manager here at Voto Latino. So knowledge is power, and we're a big community, and oftentimes our community is really affected by a lot of these like decisions that are made in our government. So I think it's really important that we have the tools to pressure our politicians to do the right thing. So yeah, anyways, I have a question for Camille. What segment are you looking forward to the most during today's live stream?
Yeah, thank you, Mariah. There are so many incredible guests today. I'm really, really looking forward to hearing from Council Member Greg Casar. I have quite a bit of family that lives in Austin, Texas, and the magnitude of his leadership and his work has directly impacted so many of my family members and friends who live in the city. So I'm very excited to hear from him and learn more about his leadership in the district. Well, I want to thank you all again for joining our stream. We, as Voto Latino staff, invite you to join our mug club. Your direct contribution of $15 or more will get you one of our limited edition mugs, the one I'm holding right here and right now, and will help us as an organization build Latinx political power. We're so excited to virtually engage with you all this year and today to celebrate the power of our voice and our vote. Now, let's hear from Maria Teresa Kumar and Paola Ramos, Vice News contributor, on the power of reporting on and uplifting authentic Latinx voices. Thank you all.
Hi, Paola, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien, desde Nueva York hablando.
I am thrilled that you're joining us today to talk about why voting works. It is our annual celebration around the White House Correspondents' Dinner, talking about why journalism is the fourth estate, why it's so important to conversations to create transparency. But we also realized that it coincided with 100 days into the Biden administration. So I want to have a conversation with you about how you are interacting now with reporting on issues that, like immigration, while that basically contrasted with what was happening in the Trump administration, what you're seeing now. And I have to say, Paola, you are such a rock star. I watched the special that you did around the trajectory of migrants coming from Colombia to Panama. And it was not only fierce, but honest and raw reporting. And I think, how do we talk more about that? So with that, what differences are you seeing in the accessibility of having these raw stories now that the Trump administration is no longer there?
I mean, I've been at the border just a couple of days ago. I got back from there, and before that, I was in El Darién through Colombia. And so, to me, the focus is for people to understand that what we're seeing right now is a huge attempt at dismantling the great mess that was inherited by the Biden administration, right? And to do that, you can focus on the policy, and you can focus on the images, but to me, the most important part is talking to the actual people that have been affected by these policies for more than 4 years at this point. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been in Reynosa, I've been in Matamoros, I've been in El Darién, and the most incredible part, and also kind of painful, but the most incredible part is seeing how hopeful they are that change can happen with this new administration. Every single person that I've talked to, every single one of them keeps mentioning, look, I know it's hard right now, but I know that change is going to happen, because that is sort of the promise, that is, and that's what drives them. And so to me, it's this constant balance between understanding that the reality on the ground is very complex. It is a logistical nightmare, what we're seeing at the border. That is the reality. But at the same time, there is a new hope that I haven't seen in many years.
So talk a little bit about how you're seeing this hope actually translate. I know that one thing that we often have as journalists is to encourage people to believe in the system, whether it's government, business, the public discord, have responded to the Latinos' rising role in America. How do you see that rising role in impacting the family, the American economy, our society as a whole?
The hope? How do I see hope in us?
Yeah, in us, and the impact that we're seeing Latinos. Oftentimes we talk about Latinos, our force, and how do you see it translating now in the work that you do and what you're witnessing on the ground?
I mean, to me, it is. I think the hope is evident in the way that people voted, and now they know that they are able to pressure this government, and that the government is responding to that pressure, right? I mean, the agenda that we're seeing coming from the White House is very much a response to the activism, to the Latino voters, and to the people that showed up at the polls. And they know that within 100 days, they couldn't ignore immigration. No, they could not put that bill in Congress. They could not get rid of MPP. And so to me, the hope is very much translated in this idea that people are finally understanding that vote actually mattered, that voice is actually being heard at the White House, and that change is happening, perhaps not as fast as people wanted to, but that they no longer feel ignored. And so I feel it amongst my friends, I feel it amongst Latinos, I feel it in the way that the administration is reacting. I feel it in the press conferences. They feel different in who gets to ask what questions. And I also feel it at the border, right? As I said, I just got back from the border. Families are being separated, but they do understand that cruelty that they felt less than a couple of months ago is no longer there. They do understand that there is a better intention, to do things in a better and more just way. And that is a huge difference. People are waiting at the border because they have hope in a system. And that wasn't there, when I was in Matamoros and in Reynosa less than a year ago.
So you mentioned the vote. Let's dig in a little deeper into that. In 2020, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won Arizona by just over 10,000 votes. They won Georgia by just under 12,000 votes. As we all know very well from wall-to-wall media coverage of voting, of recounts, of contested ballots, accusations of fraud, and so on, we also know that it was a legitimate election, and that, at least in the case of Voto Latino, we registered more voters in both states, arguably giving the Latino vote, giving Biden and Harris the margins they needed to win. How do we now talk about the Latino vote in a way that it is a force? And I ask you this because one of the things that we often encounter is that there's headlines that Latinos defected to Trump, but when we dig into the analysis, we find that, in fact, 7 out of 10 young Latinos voted for Biden. voting him in larger margins than his older counterparts. What do you see happening within the context of Latinos from different generations?
I mean, I think now we actually get to own this narrative, right? I think for so long it's been this ambiguous thing. Is the sleeping giant awake? No, how will we vote? And will we vote? And I think finally there is evidence, right? We have the evidence that whomever's at the White House can no longer win without us. And I'm so excited to see how this affects us moving forward in 2022 and in the next presidential election, because that is a new form of confidence that I think we didn't have before. No, the new generation of Latinos, no, the younger voices understanding that it rests on us, no, and that we actually do have the power. And that to me is like a different phenomenon that I don't think we've seen before.
So I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing now that I think is the most undertold story that's happening right now in the Latino community. And that is the onslaught of fake news. So we have Latinos that went out and voted because they trusted the system. And we have, though, now an apparatus that is trying to inundate us with fake news so that we stop trusting the system. What is it that we need to do as journalists? What is it that we need to do as consumers of news to talk better about identifying fake news?
That's I wake up every day because that is the biggest battle that I'm also up against. No, that's unprecedented. The no longer being able to interview people and rely on facts like that. I've never had to do that before. But I will say in the past couple of months, I've been interviewing a lot of people in the Central Valley, Latinos all over the country, in Florida, that have been bombarded with COVID-19 fake news. But the best weapons that we have against that is people like Voto Latino. It's the promotoras. It's the organizers on the ground. Those voices that have trust, that is more powerful than any fake news. And so the strategy moving forward for me is rely on the grassroots organizers, no? Rely on the Voto Latinos of the world, rely on the promotoras, because that, I'm not saying it'll be an easy battle, but to me, it's the only hope I see in trying to sort of debunk this massive machine. But yeah, but that machine, I mean, we saw that machine in the election. It's the same machine that is recycling and targeting, the COVID-19 misinformation. It's the communism misinformation. Like it's the same machine, and they're targeting us because they know that we live on Facebook, that we use social media. But I have found new hope that I didn't find during the election, and that is understanding the immense power that grassroots organizers have in actually battling that I think is a very unique thing about us as a community, no? So.
No, I think that's right. And I think oftentimes, and that's one of the reasons why, at least at Voto Latino, we did the Impact Council that you were a part of, because we recognize that it is a huge issue. But changing gears just a little bit is one of the reckonings of the Latino vote and the growth of us is also recognizing that we're sort of in this space in America because our stories have been absent. There have been little news coverage of Latino issues, and now people are more curious. Talk a little bit about what is the most unreported issue that you're seeing in the Latino community that only you could tell?
I mean, I think there's so many, but I think what always gets lost, is the beauty behind our diversity. We often, and of course, we talk about our power in numbers because the numbers are there. We talk about our power as a voting bloc, but I think often it's easy to understand like the beauty behind what it means to be Afro-Latino and Indigenous Latinos and queer Latinos and trans Latinos. And that is the way that we are winning elections. It is that diversity in many ways, people voting for many different issues. And I know it's this talking point that we always recycle. We're not a monolith, but it's harder to understand what that means. It's harder to visualize that. And so I try in all of my stories to tell these stories from different perspectives. And I'm talking about immigration. I want to talk about it from the perspective of a Black Cuban. If I'm talking about voters in Arizona, I want to talk to the incredible like trans Latinx organizers that are in Arizona. And so I try to uplift the beauty that is behind those numbers. And it is sometimes hard to ignore.
Well, and I think that for folks just tuning in, you must read Finding Latinx in Search of the Voices, Redefining Latino Identity, where Paola goes and profiles all these individuals that make up our fabric, that make us our beauty and our diversity. And I think you're right, Paula. Oftentimes it's these nuances that mainstream media often miss. And that's why your voice is so important, whether you're hosting a Vice News correspondence piece, whether you're contributing on Telemundo and MSNBC. And I understand now that you're also a House Fellow at the Kennedy School, which is my former alma mater. How's that coming along?
It's been great. It's been great. I've learned so much from this. I still feel like a young student myself, so it's kind of like trippy, but I learned so much from them. So it's been amazing.
So as we close, I want to ask you, what is your advice for someone that is young and scrappy and wants to get their foot in the door in journalism? What advice do you have to offer?
To not be scared. I think the imposter syndrome always knocks on your door. Always. It knocked on my door so many times. And it's very easy to listen to that voice, to feel like, no, like my English or my Spanish isn't that perfect. No, why would I insert myself in the conversation? That happens and that will happen. And that has happened to me throughout my entire career. Ignore that, because I think in this moment, we have more to offer than what they have to offer us. And that's very different. No company can any longer tell these stories in national media without our voice. And that again is like a different shift that we're seeing. So speak up, just do it.
And I have to say, I love that we have more to offer than they have to offer us. I think that is one place where we have to underline, highlight, and put exclamation points. I think it's true. Sometimes we enter spaces and we don't realize how much we're teaching, whether we like it or not, because that can be kind of challenging. So Paola, where can folks pick up your book?
It's in most local bookstores. I will not tell you to go on Amazon. Go to your local bookstores and you will very likely find it there. But it's called Finding Latinx in Search of the Voices, Redefining Latino Identities.
So on closing, I want to know, what is your next project that you're working on?
My next project, I'm very focused on just really trying to dissect what's happening at the border, right? Like understand the decision making that goes behind these mothers and fathers that are still separating from their children. And I think it's important for even us as a Latino community to understand that, because I think it is also easy for us to forget that we too are immigrants, that these are the places that we too came from. And so I want to remind people of that. And so I'll be in Matamoros a lot, I'll be in Reynosa, and I'll be trying to tell those stories.
And are you going to be doing it through Vice News?
Yes, mostly through Vice News and through Telemundo, but most of my work will be on Vice News.
Well, I can't wait to see it. I'm telling my audience to go ahead and tune in. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And I have to say, it's been awesome, awesome, awesome to watch you grow in your career and the stories that you're telling are fierce. So, con mucho cuidado, take good care of yourself. Un abrazo. Thank you for joining us with our voice and our vote. I'll talk to you soon. Nos vemos, Paula.
Bye. Hasta luego.
Hi everyone, this is Hector joining from Alexandria, Virginia. Excited to join Voto Latino Foundation on this Voting Works live stream. I'm here to talk about my experience volunteering with Voto Latino and celebrate all the great work that we've done so far to push policy and action that matters. I volunteer because I care about seeing our communities prosper and moving our country forward, especially in areas like immigration, wealth inequality, and student loan debt. I feel that if we all work together, we can absolutely make a difference in these areas. So thank you so much. If you'd like to join us here at Voto Latino, text volunteer to 73179. I look forward to seeing you online and to virtually mobilize with you.
Hello everyone, my name is Chuck Flores. I'm in Whittier, California, just southeast of downtown Los Angeles, and I'm really excited to be a part of the Voting Works live stream for Voto Latino. I'm really proud of the work that we did as a team and really encouraging people to get out to vote. The countless hours spent texting, phone calls, etc. really paid off. We have our president in office, and I'm proud of the work that he's now engaged in. As an educator, I have been involved in politics for quite some time, and I've always talked to my students about the importance of getting out to vote. Either my K-12 kids as a principal or my current students in educational leadership at Cal State LA, but we can't downplay the importance of voting. And I'm very proud of the work that Voto Latino does to encourage and make certain that all people have that opportunity to vote. I want to thank you all so much for allowing me the opportunity. And if you want to join us, text volunteer to 73179. Take care, and let's move forward. Thank you.
So I want to welcome now Councilmember Casar. Thank you so much for joining us today on #VotingWorks celebration. We recognize that the reason that we are able to make monumental change in this moment in our country is because young people and people of color have gone out and voted. And we're so grateful for all the work that you're doing in Austin. I've been following you closely. You are on a roll, and we love having you as part of the Voto Latino familia because you represent what it means when you roll up your sleeves and you jump into the ring, and you not only are an advocate for so many important things, but that you decide to run for office. So thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you so much for having me. And thanks to all of the young folks and people of color who have been going out and voting in record numbers, because it's obviously really scared the people in charge of the status quo. And a lot of the change that is happening is only because of everybody, not only who went out and voted, but who volunteered and registered people. And now we need you again as we keep trying to take advantage of the opportunities that have been created here at the local and the federal level.
Well, and you know what most folks may not realize about you is that you were actually the youngest council member ever voted into the Austin City Council. What inspired you?
Yeah, when I was 24 years old, I ran for the Austin City Council. And for a few years before that, I was a community organizer at a group called Workers Defense Project, where we do community and labor organizing in the immigrant community. And I saw how much of a divide there was between what oftentimes City Hall said that they were doing and how progressive our city said we were versus what we were actually getting done, especially in the Latino community, especially in working class neighborhoods. And so I actually went to a Voto Latino training. I went to a variety of events where people said, well, why don't you go and try and do it? And really it was groups of volunteers and young people just going and knocking on tons of doors, running a grassroots campaign. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And then I won, and now I've been doing it for a few years. And so I think I try to tell people that there is no waiting your turn in this. It's really about just getting in and filling in whichever role you want to fit into, whether that's running for office or helping support a campaign or pushing for a policy change. It's never too early to get involved.
Tell me right now, though, what's on top of your agenda? What's the most important priority for you right now?
Man, you're asking a hard one with just one thing. Especially because here in Texas, we are trying to take advantage of this moment where we have support from the federal government to go from surviving in our community to thriving, while at the same time, we are so under attack from our state government at every angle. And so I feel pulled two ways, right? I wake up in the morning thinking about what good we can really do for the community right now, as far as getting everyone vaccinated and getting people back to a safe job with a better wage, but then going to bed at night really worried about the attacks on voting rights and the attacks on trans youth and the attacks on workers' rights and voter suppression, all happening at the state level. And so it's really hard to try to balance how it is we're showing up to our community to be on offense, to make things better, while really in places like Texas trying to defend against the most powerful people in the state who are really trying to spend their time making things worse instead of doing their jobs to make things better.
So I want to talk a little bit about this, because the reason we're all here is because in the midterm election in 2018, young people led the way and introduced the most diverse Congress in our nation's history. And it was a Congress that finally looked more like America. We could argue that that was the dress rehearsal. And in 2020, we had the same thing. We had a huge uptick of a diverse, multicultural America that voted in the most diversity that we've seen along state, local, and federal government. And yet we see this time and time again, people who want to suppress our vote. You know, at the national level, Voto Latino, we're working very much for the People Act, for the People Act, to expand voting rights, and then the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to say, hey, this is what makes our democracy thrive. But we're seeing, and you've alluded to it, these restrictive bills, whether we're talking about Iowa or Georgia, but now in Texas, that are trying to dissuade us from our power. Talk a little bit about that, and what can we do to stop that?
Yeah, it's something that we see time and time again, where we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to make things better for our community. How do we get people vaccines? How do we make sure people don't get evicted? How do we improve wages on the job or deal with student debt? We see so often, especially amongst the right wing and those with a lot of existing power, that they work on how to make sure that they change the structure so that we can't vote, so that none of those things, so that even if there are some gains in Congress or some gains in the courts, that those things can get rolled back. They try to work on this structural issue of making it so that we can never vote in those numbers again. And so, here in Texas, they're trying to get rid of extended voting hours. They don't want voting hours early in the morning or late at night when working people are more able to vote. They want to restrict our ability to tell people about mail-in voting ballots. They have all these laws that are really Jim Crow 2.0. And they keep saying, well, where is the voter suppression? The voter suppression is in every line of the bill. So it's really important to be able to push back against those state initiatives while pursuing federal change.
So can I ask you, as you know, at Voto Latino, we try to not only register voters, but we talk to our voters all the time, making sure that they hold their electeds accountable, making sure that they are participating with good legislation. What do you tell our audience that they should do right now, particularly those in Texas, to help prevent these voter registration and restrictive laws from happening? What's your recommendation as someone that's been elected, but that was a former organizer?
I'll give you 3 things. First, for all the people online watching, go and follow the organizations like Voto Latino, like Texas Civil Rights Project, like Move Texas, who are involved in fighting against voter suppression at the Capitol. Follow their accounts and get involved in organizations, because you're going to be so much more powerful when you're working alongside millions of other people rather than just yourself. So get involved in organizations and commit your time to those. 2, make sure you're calling your state reps and senators, but then also call your friends who are in other parts of the state to reach out, because a lot of times those state reps and senators actually don't get that many phone calls and emails. You'd be surprised. And if people are jamming up their phone lines, they have to pay attention. And third is, as these things get closer to becoming law, we're going to be at the Capitol. I mean, the fact of the matter, like being able to, if you feel safe, be physically present can make a big difference. I mean, we flooded the Capitol when they were trying to, when Wendy Davis was having her filibuster against really needless abortion restrictions. Many of us got arrested protesting the Show Me Your Papers law that passed a few years ago. And we'll fill the Capitol again as they try to block our voting rights, because those voting rights are at the core of everything else that we can get done as a society.
We just did a study and found that close to 51% of Latinos were vaccine hesitant. And we know that we have been the essential workers. We know that our community has been devastated by the vaccine. We know that we're still the essential workers. We live in multi-generational families, and we as a community cannot be healthy if we're not vaccinated. What are you doing? What do you recommend to combat that?
One thing we're starting to do is to have the local governments and to push your local city and county to directly resource community organizations and schools and groups on the ground that work and have trusted relationships in the Latino community. Because it's right, when you see something on Facebook, that can be hard disinformation to beat with just another ad on Facebook that says it's safe. Well, now you've got a split opinion, right? Or just TV ads. But we're trying to work directly with our school counselors and teachers to make phone calls through their classrooms, to work with our community organizations to say, you know what, we're going to have a food bank, we're going to have a school supply drive, and we're going to have the vaccines here. And we can talk to you, people about why it's safer for your family to get the vaccine. And we have to recognize, just like when you're trying to knock on someone's door to get them to vote, that people may not say yes the first time. And that's why you go for the second time and the third time. And so something that I was just this last weekend giving out vaccines at some neighborhood events and churches in the 100% Latino community. And for some people, when we showed up and said, hey, there's vaccines here at church, you just go to just go to that fold out table at the back and we'll give you a shot. And some people were hesitant. They weren't ready that day. But maybe if we go back the next time or the next time, then people might get it. We're trying to start setting up vaccines at every fire station, at libraries and YMCAs, so that people eventually, if they've heard 2 or 3 times, they can just walk over and get it when you're ready.
So Greg, first of all, I think that what makes you so unique in the work is that you come from the community. And oftentimes people make this argument that diversity doesn't really matter. It's like, no, diversity matters because you bring your life's work with the nuance of understanding people's issues. And I think that you do that so beautifully. If you were to have a conversation with the Biden administration, what is one thing that you would encourage them to do in the next 100 days?
You know, I'm going to turn the question a little bit back to our viewers around, I think that the Biden administration has proven to be really responsive to when people all come together and really make an ask and make a push, right? And so instead of just what my thing is, right, I would sort of in some ways decline the meeting and say, let's get everybody together to come and push and make a big ask, right? Like, how do we empower the community long-term? And to me, the For the People Act with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the PRO Act, which really would allow people to unionize at the workplace, and then comprehensive immigration reform would be 3 ways that we improve just our democracy long-term, not just for the people that already have access, but for the people that have been left out and for the people that specifically Trump was elected to step on to sort of give folks that power back.
I'd say amen to that. You have basically, in a nutshell, talked to us what it means when people vote. Voting works is what you're sharing with us, that when you show up, you elect individuals at the local level all the way to the federal level that represent our values. And so, Gregorio, I am grateful for your time. You continue being fierce, continue showing up for the communities who don't have a voice, and so grateful for all that you do.
Of course, thank you. And I just encourage everybody, not push on Congress and the federal government, but push on your local government too. I mean, find ways that you can build that momentum and that movement locally. You can set up local deportation defense funds. You can end low-level marijuana arrests in your community. You can expand voting locations and voting hours in your local community too. And so that's another really important place to get involved, and Voto Latino shows the way on that too. So thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
It's great to see where you are. Keep it up, Greg.
Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Bella Delasio, and I'm a policy associate at March for Our Lives, a youth-led gun violence prevention organization founded after the 2018 shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, which claimed the lives of 17 students and staff members. Since then, our movement has expanded to young people all over this nation who have organized and advocated for gun violence prevention at all levels of government. Young people knew that our vote was our voice and that we had to vote in record numbers to defeat the gun lobby and to get life-saving legislation passed to end the epidemic of gun violence in this nation. March for Our Lives has placed many of our efforts into getting young people to vote, and we are not surprised that youth voter turnout in 2020 shattered previous voting records because we know that young people knew what was at stake. Young people were a key voting bloc in pivotal swing states such as Arizona, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. And our vote mattered. Our vote got us a plan to combat the epidemic of gun violence. We have seen universal background checks passed in the House, and our president has taken historic executive actions, including additional regulation of ghost guns, reporting on firearms trafficking, and created model extreme risk protection order legislation for states. Our vote also gave us a historic investment proposal of $5 billion towards community violence prevention in the American Jobs Plan. At March for Our Lives, we know that our vote is not only our own voice, but also a voice for those who cannot vote because they have been victims of gun violence. We are so proud of our communities and young people for doing their part to make sure that we see changes so that we can have a future without gun violence. Felicitaciones en votar. Tu voto es tu voz.
Hey everyone, I'm Brandon Brown with the New Georgia Project. And first I want to say thank you to all of the volunteers, the organizers, the partners, the staffers, and any and everyone else that helped us in an effort to register people to vote and protect the vote here in Georgia. Without you, we wouldn't have been able to win. But as you know, we still have a lot more work left to do. With SB 202 being one of the worst bills in the nation when it comes to voting laws, not only does it make it a crime for people to pass out water and snacks to voters as they wait in line for upwards of 6 hours, it also gives individuals the right to challenge any voter's ballot. This is wrong. And so we're looking to continue to work tirelessly and work with partners and members of the community in an effort to make sure that every voter has equal and equitable access to voting.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Danny Friedman. I'm Voto Latino's managing director.
Hey, all, it's Brianna Carmen. I'm the Director of Organizing and Partnerships at Voto Latino. We have heard from such amazing people from our community already. We've already heard from Paola Ramos and Texas Council Member Greg Casar. Thank you all so much for lending your voices to this important conversation.
And thank you to our outstanding partners for sharing your message with our audience.
Very cool. And so, Friedman, it's been officially 99 days since President Biden was inaugurated and is now in office. So far, we've passed the American Rescue Plan. Over 200 million Americans have been vaccinated, and the House has passed the Farm Workforce Modernization Act and the American Dream and Promise Act. So, Friedman, you know, as someone who's been working in this movement for a while, and you've been able to see a bunch of different administrations and some really amazing legislation come through, what are you most excited about this year?
Brianna, you're making me sound old. A bunch of administrations. Well, look, like this is an unprecedented time in our country, right? We just came off of one of the most controversial and tumultuous presidencies in our history. We're in the middle of a pandemic and all the impact that's having on our community, whether it's the immediate health impact and the economic impact. So I'm excited for stuff to continue to improve, right? The fact that we've been able to get so many folks vaccinated around the country, that our Latino community is stepping up in terms of getting vaccinated and has always carried so much of the burden of essential work, whether it's in healthcare or making sure people have food to eat, right? The folks who are working on farms and whatnot. It's really exciting. So there's more to do, right? We have a lot of work to do to make sure that folks who are not in the kind of knowledge sector and have white collar jobs have the ability to retain those jobs. The retail sector has a lot of work to be done to help our brothers and sisters who work in other industries and whatnot. So I'm excited to see all the different developments to help all these different sectors, come back, right? Like for folks to become, from higher levels of employment. The other thing that I'm excited about is that we've seen the results of some of the direct payments and economic support that's happening, right? So, the dialogue about making sure that children are kept out of poverty and that unemployment benefits are extended while we right-size everything that's happening. There's more to do on that, but I do think that there's momentum, and I'm really excited to see how this administration and our partners in other sectors of government, right? Because it's not just the president and vice president leading on this. I mean, it's up to everybody to help make this possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm excited. I feel like we're going in the right direction. Brianna, you and your team have been up to quite a bit this year since registering over 612,000 voters. 612,000 voters. It's a lot of people, and turning out almost 4 million last year. Can you tell us about what Voto Latino has been up to since January 20th?
Sure. So we never really stopped. I think, we went from the election to Georgia special election to the inauguration, and now we are really focused on a few different things. One of them being coronavirus, trying to make sure that our gente come out stronger on the other side of this pandemic, making sure that we have access to vaccines. And vaccine equity is really top of mind for folks. So we're working with Lyft and Uber, and it's something that I'm really proud about, and just to be able to be a part of Getting people rides. So if you need a ride to your vaccine appointment, or if you know someone who needs a ride and transportation would be a barrier to them getting vaccinated, you can text VAX, VAX, to 73179 to take the pledge that you'll get vaccinated and find out more information on how to access one of those free rides. And then on the second hand, we have been super busy working, day in, day out on our bread and butter voter registration and voter protection. So we saw, really coming out of the election in November, just a lot of questions, are elections safe? Who is voting? Conversations around voting fraud. And we are seeing a lot of voter suppression bills come out of those conversations, where this year started off. And I think, as of March 30th, there have been over 300 different bills introduced in 47 state legislatures that would actually suppress the vote. So everything from taking down the number of polling locations to changing polling hours. You saw folks out in Houston have drive-through voting. It would limit drive-through voting in spots like Texas. You would also have stricter voter ID, which we know impacts communities of color and those who are lower income, especially. So we have just been, really tracking this. And one way that we see to really combat all of these terrible things going on at the state level is a federal bill called the For the People Act. So HR 1 in the House, S1 in the Senate. And the idea there is that it would really standardize voting across the board in all 50 states and make sure that we're not moving backward, but we're actually moving forward and protecting voting rights. So making it standard so people have, 15 days at minimum to go out and early vote. Some conversations around voter ID, vote by mail, which we saw just expand monumentally last cycle. And that's something that you can help us support by going to votolatino.org/support HR1. And it'll take you to a form where you can email or contact your member of Congress and let them know that you care about voting rights and you care about the Latinx community's voice being heard. So we're working on those two things among many different other things that happen throughout the week, and just really excited for everyone to be joining us today.
All right, so let me make sure I caught it all. So if I text you, I can get a ride to get a vaccine. And if I go on the website, then I can tell Congress that they need to protect my voting rights, despite the fact that a bunch of state legislatures are trying to do the opposite.
Yes. So we're doing the work. Join us.
And if there's anything to take away from this conversation, we want you to remember that voting really does work. Everything that we just talked about could not have come to pass without your participation in our democracy.
And you're going to be seeing people drinking out of these awesome mugs. So if you want to join one and support our voter registration and voter protection work, you can go to votolatino.org/mug club to get a really cool mug and join us in the fight. So Danny, back to you.
Well, let's kick it over to our fearless leader, Maria Teresa, to introduce our next guest.
I am absolutely delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, who has been an incredible advocate for voting rights, for healthcare reform, and full disclosure, has been a longtime friend of Voto Latino since our inception, providing friendship and counsel along the way. Not only did her election make history, but it changed the way young people around the world, especially young girls of color, can see themselves at the highest echelons of power. It is with that I'm so grateful to introduce the Vice President herself, Kamala Harris. Vice President Harris, Voto Latino thanks you for joining us today to celebrate the power of our voice and our vote. Voting works. Today, our network of community organizers, advocates, followers, and supporters are gathered to celebrate the early wins of the White House administration, because not only did they vote, but as a result of you being there, millions of Americans are finding relief, whether it's through vaccine shots or whether it's that extra funding that can help them pay rent. And to be frank, we're celebrating these wins today because of young people. They turned out and voted in record numbers last November. To Voto Latino supporters and community advocates, I thank you for turning out your friends in the vote where it mattered most, in your local communities. And I deeply commend all of you for strengthening the heart of our democratic institutions when your country needed you most, despite a pandemic. So grateful. Vice President Harris, thank you again for joining us today. We're so excited to hear from you. Bienvenida.
Greetings to everyone, and to Maria Teresa, Kumar, and the entire Voto Latino community. Thank you for inviting me to join you today, this 100th day of the Biden-Harris administration. The work you do to register voters, to strengthen our democracy, couldn't be more important. I can honestly say we wouldn't be here without Voto Latino. Elections matter. Voting matters. You know, 100 days ago, President Joe Biden and I were sworn into office, and that night I stood in front of the Lincoln Memorial and I talked about what I call American aspiration. I talked about how in America, we not only dream, we do. We not only see what has been, we see what can be. Over the last 100 days, I have seen American aspiration at work. In the volunteers at a food bank I visited in Nevada. In the union workers I got to know in North Carolina. In the small business owners I talked with in Colorado. In the child care providers I met in Connecticut. And the children they care for. I have seen American aspiration in the scientists who created the vaccine, in the nurses who are administering it, and in every American who has signed up to get the vaccine shot. American aspiration is how we got to more than 200 million shots in arms in less than 100 days. It is how we sent out relief checks to 160 million people, provided support to Latino-owned small businesses, cut taxes for families with children. Through the American Rescue Plan, we are lifting half of all children living in poverty out of poverty, including nearly 2 million Latino children. And we are reducing poverty in Latino communities by almost 40%. We created more new jobs in these 100 days than any other administration in history. And moving forward, we will create millions more jobs through the American Jobs Plan. And we will make childcare affordable and make pre-K universal throughout American Families Plan. Voto Latino, the President and I are just getting started, and we need your help because we aren't going to take it slow. We are not going to take it one step at a time. No, we are going to take one giant leap into the future. That is American aspiration. That is America. So let's do this together. Thank you.
What an honor to be here today. I am so proud to be a part of the Voto Latino team and to work alongside our amazing staff who make magic happen like this every single day. Now, if there's one thing to take away from our stream, it's this. Voting really does work. Voting isn't just an every 4-year thing. I encourage you all to cast your vote in every local and state election. When we vote, we use our voice, and our voice can be used to bring real change to our communities. Now, we've had a lot of victories over these last few weeks, but the work continues. We're thinking especially about the importance of making sure our gente gets vaccinated. Voto Latino collaborated with Change Research to learn more about how our community feels about the COVID-19 vaccine, and we found that 3 in 5 Latino respondents know someone in their household or community who is unwilling to take the vaccine. Because of this finding, Voto Latino will be devoting considerable attention to vaccine access and education. In June, we'll be hosting a National Day of Action to make sure that our moms, abuelas, tias, tios, friends, everyone gets vaccinated. Be sure to follow @Voto Latino on social media to stay up to date on vaccine information and to keep in touch with our organization. Again, thank you all for being here with us, for joining us. Thank you to all of our incredible speakers and partners.